In the beginning, there were only whispers. Old soldiers spoke of it in dimly lit bars, their voices low, their eyes darting to make sure no one was listening. Merchants swore they'd seen a shadow crossing the void where no star shone, a darkness that swallowed light itself. Scholars in forgotten corners of ancient archives argued about its existence, wondering if the records were real or just myth, dressed in fear. They called it many things across the centuries. The Black Ship, the Silent Hunter, humanity's last judgment. But the name that stuck in every alien tongue was the one said with a shiver. The Cataclysm. For thousands of years, no one had seen it. Even humanity itself, scattered among colonies, worlds, and stations, treated the legend like an embarrassing story told by drunk veterans. But history has a way of circling back, and the galaxy never truly forgets. When the stars began to go quiet, on the edge of known space, when fleets vanished without distress signals, when entire colonies fell into static silence, people began to remember, and fear spread like a sickness. The galaxy had long since grown used to balance, alien empires rising and falling, alliances shifting, wars breaking out, treaties stitching things back together. Humanity had been part of this vast, messy stage, a young species that had clawed its way into relevance with grit and stubbornness. But even among the most powerful empires, there was always the quiet reminder of that old warning. Never awaken the Black Ship. It wasn't a tool. It wasn't a fleet. It was a weapon, a relic from a time when humanity was cornered, desperate, and willing to create something so terrible that the universe itself had to move on and pretend it never existed. No one really knew who had built it. Some said it wasn't built at all, that it was summoned, a living thing fused with machine, born from grief and fury. Others believed it was the product of ancient war foundries, a weapon designed by humans but too dangerous to keep under their control. The truth was buried beneath centuries of dust. What everyone agreed on was the effect. When the Black Ship appeared, wars ended. Not through negotiation, not through peace, but through annihilation. Empires crumbled, fleets burned, and silence followed in its wake. The first sighting came from a patrol near the Orlos Rift. A cruiser, a simple human ship on routine duty, picked up a distortion. The crew thought it was a sensor glitch, gravity readings spiking where no mass should exist. Then the stars bent, as if space itself was being pulled apart, and from the void slid a vessel darker than night. No lights, no insignia, no broadcast, just a colossal silhouette, like a shadow carved into reality. The patrol sent one frantic signal before it vanished mid-sentence, cut short by static. When search teams arrived, they found nothing. No wreckage, no lifeboats, just silence, as though the ship and crew had never existed at all. At first, humanity tried to deny it. Leaders said it was pirate activity, or experimental alien weapons, or just hysteria spreading from rumors. But denial cracked fast. Within weeks, 3 more fleets were erased. Witnesses described the same thing, a leviathan of metal that didn't move like a ship, that didn't fight like a fleet, but simply unwound its enemies, tearing ships apart with beams that left no fire, no debris, just husks drained of life. It didn't chase. It didn't speak. It appeared, destroyed, and vanished again. And here's the part that chilled everyone to the bone. It only targeted aliens. Not a single human vessel had been touched. Reports came of human refugee ships drifting right past its hull, their crews paralyzed with terror, expecting to be obliterated. But the Black Ship only turned its weapons outward toward the fleets of other species. Humanity, whether by design or by curse, was spared. That was when the old archives began to surface. Files sealed by forgotten governments, fragments of testimony from survivors of wars thousands of years past. A picture formed, one nobody wanted to face. The Black Ship had been made for one purpose, to protect humanity at all costs. Not through diplomacy, not through balance, but through fear. It was a weapon built to reset the galactic board whenever humanity was at risk of being erased. And now, after centuries of slumber, it had awakened again. Of course, the galaxy reacted. Alien empires accused humanity of unleashing it deliberately, of breaking some ancient treaty no one dared mention until now. Trade routes closed. Borders sealed. Armadas massed on the edges of human space. Fear turned into rage, and rage turned into threats. Humanity pleaded innocence, but suspicion only grew. The Black Ship had chosen its time well. The galaxy was already strained by rivalries, and now everyone wanted someone to blame. Inside humanity's own ranks, there was division. Some called it salvation, a sign that history had turned in their favor again. Others saw only doom, a weapon they couldn't control, a monster that had slept too long and returned to finish what it had started. Ordinary people whispered in markets and stations, afraid that the aliens' fury would fall on them next, afraid that the weapon meant to protect them would bring only ruin, and somewhere out there in the black between stars, the ship waited, watching, moving when it wanted, striking where it chose. Its design didn't match anything modern. Its angles were wrong, its surface almost organic, as though the metal itself pulsed faintly like skin. No one knew how it navigated. No one knew who commanded it, or if anyone did at all. Some thought it was crewed by humans long dead, their bodies fused into its walls. Others swore it was completely alive, a predator in the shape of a warship. The first attempt to stop it came from a coalition fleet of 3 alien empires. They set a trap in the Ashen Corridor, a stretch of dead space with only one entry point. Hundreds of ships waited, armed with weapons designed to pierce planets. They waited in silence for days, sensors wide open, hearts pounding. And then it came. Not through the entry point, not through normal space. It simply was there, sliding into existence like a nightmare stepping into a dream. The coalition fired everything. Beams, missiles, plasma storms, an avalanche of destruction that lit up the void brighter than a star. For a moment, they thought it had worked. Then the light cleared. The Black Ship was still there, not a scratch on its hull. It answered with one sweep of its weapons, a wave of black energy that tore through the armada like dry grass in a fire. In less than a minute, hundreds of ships became drifting, lifeless shells. And then the ship was gone again, leaving only wreckage and silence. From that day, the galaxy understood. This was no myth. No rumor, no superstition. The Black Ship was real. It was awake. And it was moving with a purpose no one could guess. The question that hung in every heart was simple and terrifying. Was it here to save humanity? Or to doom everyone else? And so the story begins, with a galaxy trembling in the shadow of the Black Ship, and a humanity caught between salvation and damnation as whispers grow louder and fear spreads. Somewhere out there, the Cataclysm is waiting. Its engines hum in the dark. Its weapons are silent for now. But the balance of galactic history is already shifting, and when it strikes again, nothing will ever be the same. Humanity had always carried a strange reputation among the stars. To the older empires, they were seen as reckless dreamers, bold enough to leap into unknown space, stubborn enough to fight against impossible odds, and foolish enough to survive where logic said they shouldn't. Other species, older and more measured, often shook their heads at humanity's restless nature. But beneath that restlessness was something the galaxy had always underestimated, a memory of being prey, a fire that burned from centuries of surviving on the edge of extinction. It was said that when humanity first expanded beyond its homeworld, they encountered cruelty almost immediately. Alien warlords saw them as weak, as latecomers to the cosmic stage. Colonies were raided, fleets crushed, and worlds reduced to ash. Humanity learned quickly that there was no kindness waiting for them in the stars. They either adapted or died. And so in the shadows of those first wars, they built things no one else dared build. The Black Ship was the darkest of those creations, a weapon forged from desperation when entire human populations were about to be erased. It was not made to win battles. It was made to make enemies afraid to fight at all. Over time, the galaxy adjusted. The threat of the Cataclysm lingered in the background, unspoken but never forgotten. Humanity survived, expanded, and eventually thrived, weaving itself into the great network of trade, politics, and uneasy peace. Generations passed. The Black Ship faded into legend. New generations never believed it was real. Even most humans thought it was just another exaggerated war story, something to scare children or entertain tired soldiers on long patrols. That belief lasted. Until now. When the black ship reappeared, humanity found itself standing in the middle of a storm. Alien alliances, already fragile, began to crumble under fear. Rumors painted humanity as puppet masters, secretly guiding the weapon to strike their rivals. Protests broke out in alien capitals, demanding retaliation. Border skirmishes erupted, and trade ships began refusing to dock at human stations. Humanity tried to push back against the accusations, insisting they had no control over the Cataclysm. But words carried little weight when the evidence was so overwhelming. Only aliens were being destroyed. Humanity was untouched. Inside human space, leaders scrambled. Emergency councils met behind sealed doors, debating whether to claim responsibility, deny everything, or search desperately for answers. But the truth was simple: they didn't know. The black ship didn't answer hails, didn't accept escorts, didn't respond to signals of any kind. It moved on its own, striking with precision that felt deliberate, as if it had a mind of its own. On the ground, ordinary people lived with a mixture of pride and dread. Some saw it as proof that humanity was chosen, protected by its ancestors' sacrifice. They whispered that the black ship was destiny itself, a guardian that had returned in the hour of need. Others feared that being protected made them targets. What if the rest of the galaxy decided the only way to stop the Cataclysm was to wipe out humanity entirely? For the first time in generations, people looked at the stars not with wonder but with suspicion. The fear was not only external. Within human fleets, tensions ran high. Captains argued over whether to shadow the black ship or avoid it entirely. Soldiers who had sworn to protect colonies now whispered about being part of something far beyond their command. Engineers examined every record they could find, desperate to uncover the ship's secrets, its design, its origin, anything that might give them control. Yet every archive led to dead ends, deliberate erasures, or fragments too cryptic to decipher. Someone in humanity's past had wanted the truth buried deep. And then there were the survivors, rare, shaken souls who claimed to have seen the black ship up close. One freighter captain swore he'd drifted within a kilometer of its hull after his engines failed. He said its surface wasn't metal at all, but something that seemed to breathe, like muscle covered in black glass. He insisted he'd heard whispers in his head, voices layered over each other, speaking in human languages long dead. When questioned further, his story unraveled into incoherent mutterings, as if even recalling the memory damaged his mind. He wasn't the only one. Others told similar stories, shadows moving across the ship's hull, pulses of light that felt like eyes watching them, the sensation of being judged and dismissed. For every story, there were 10 denials. Scientists claimed stress and fear explained everything. Officials called it propaganda spread by alien spies. But the more the black ship appeared, the harder it became to explain away. Patterns emerged. Its attacks were not random. It struck at fleets massing near human borders, at stations rumored to be plotting alliances against Earth, at strongholds where weapons of mass destruction were being gathered. To some, this proved it was humanity's guardian. To others, it was evidence of cold, calculating intent. The ship was shaping the galaxy, trimming threats before they grew. Alien leaders began to send messages, ultimatums, threats, and finally, offers. Some demanded humanity deactivate the weapon or face war. Others pleaded for negotiation, offering to share resources if humanity called it off. But the truth was clear: humanity could not control it. They couldn't even track it. The Cataclysm appeared and disappeared at will, striking with terrifying precision and then vanishing into the dark. Humanity was left in the worst position imaginable, held accountable for a weapon they did not command, and feared for a protection they did not understand. Whispers grew louder inside human ranks. There were rumors of secret cults forming, groups who believed the black ship was a divine force, proof that humanity was destined to rule. At the same time, resistance movements rose, demanding that humanity find a way to destroy it before the galaxy turned on them completely. Both sides clashed in the streets of colonies, protests erupting into riots, families divided over whether the Cataclysm was salvation or doom. Meanwhile, the black ship kept moving, and with each strike, it seemed to grow bolder. Fleets larger than ever before fell to it. Entire armadas of veteran alien warriors were reduced to silence in hours. The galaxy's balance was unraveling, thread by thread, but the most unsettling part wasn't the destruction. It was the sense of purpose. Experts analyzed the strike patterns and realized something terrifying. The Black Ship wasn't just eliminating threats. It was shaping the map. Systems were being cleared in a way that carved out corridors of space, territories left open, paths unchallenged. It was as if the galaxy was being reset, remade into a design only the ship understood. Inside humanity's high councils, a question none dared to voice too loudly began to take shape. If the Black Ship was truly created by their ancestors, what else had those ancestors built? Was this just the beginning? Was there more hidden in the dark, waiting to awaken? One meeting ended with a chilling silence when a historian whispered the possibility that shook even the most hardened generals. What if the Black Ship wasn't protecting humanity at all? What if it was protecting something else, and humanity was simply in the way? No one had an answer. No one dared to guess. And yet, in the heart of the void, far from prying eyes, the Black Ship stirred once more. Its hull shimmered with faint light, patterns moving like veins beneath its surface. Deep within, something pulsed. A rhythm older than any empire, steady as a heartbeat. It turned toward a new target, silent as the grave, its engines awakening without sound. Somewhere out there, another fleet was about to vanish. And humanity, caught between fear and awe, could only watch the stars and wonder whether the Cataclysm had returned to save them, or to finish what it started long ago. The Black Ship's shadow stretched farther with every passing week, and the galaxy trembled under its silent campaign. What had begun as isolated strikes had become a deliberate march across star systems. Alien fleets pulled back in panic. Empires that once boasted of centuries of dominance now huddled behind fortified borders. Yet no fortress seemed strong enough. No strategy seemed clever enough. The Cataclysm always found a way through. For humanity, the pressure grew unbearable. Colonies lived in constant fear of retaliation from alien neighbors. Traders who once thrived on interstellar markets now found their ships turned away or boarded under suspicion. Outposts that had relied on foreign supplies began to starve. Even though the Black Ship never fired on a human craft, its shadow smothered every aspect of human life. Protection and doom walked side by side, and no one could tell which one would reach them first. In the high council chambers, leaders fought bitterly over how to respond. Some wanted to prepare for war, arguing that the alien empires were too close to uniting against them. Others begged for patience, pleading that any move to attack or claim control over the Black Ship would only confirm the worst suspicions. Behind every speech, though, was the same fear. No one knew if the ship was ally or enemy, and no one could stop it either way. Meanwhile, human scientists worked night and day, combing through forbidden archives and dissecting ancient fragments of data. The puzzle was maddening. Some scraps hinted that the Black Ship was not a single vessel, but the first of a series. Other fragments suggested it had been buried deliberately, not only from enemies, but from humanity itself. Engineers tried to decode the strange energy signatures it left behind, but every attempt ended in corrupted data or readings that made no sense, as though the laws of physics bent around it. The deeper they dug, the more it seemed like the weapon was not only beyond their control, but beyond their understanding. On the edges of human space, soldiers faced a different struggle. Patrols reported alien ambushes growing more frequent. Small skirmishes flared where frightened empires tried to strike at human ships, believing they were guiding the Cataclysm. For the men and women aboard those ships, the fear was not just of enemy fire, but of their supposed protector. More than once, crews froze when their scanners picked up distortions in space, praying the anomaly was not the ship itself appearing above them. Some whispered that the worst death would be to be spared, to drift within sight of the Black Ship's hull, knowing it chose not to kill them, knowing it could end them at any second if it wished. Civilian life cracked under the weight of uncertainty. Families argued in crowded habitats about whether to flee deeper into human space or try to hide among alien colonies. On one colony world, Riots broke out when a group of zealots declared the Black Ship to be the rightful ruler of humanity, demanding that people prepare to follow its will. On another, mobs hunted anyone suspected of contacting alien governments, accusing them of plotting to betray humanity before the Cataclysm struck again. The fear had grown so deep that even ordinary neighbors no longer trusted each other, and yet not all humans feared it. A secret movement formed, small but growing, made up of those who believed the Black Ship was humanity's greatest chance at survival. They claimed the ship was not a curse, but a gift, an inheritance from a time when humans had sworn never to be prey again. They spread recordings of alien fleets burning, arguing that the galaxy's predators were finally being punished. They called themselves the heirs, and while most dismissed them as fanatics, their message struck a chord with many who were tired of living in fear. On the alien side, the mood was far more desperate. Species that had warred for centuries suddenly spoke of alliances, not out of trust but out of terror. Old rivalries were pushed aside in hushed meetings, leaders plotting in shadows about how to crush the human race before the Black Ship erased them all. Some argued for preemptive strikes on human colonies. Others whispered of finding humanity's homeworld and glassing it from orbit. The galaxy's great powers, once divided by greed and ambition, were beginning to unite for survival, and humanity stood at the center of their wrath. But unity came too slowly. Each time the aliens tried to rally, the Black Ship struck again, carving apart fleets before they could even assemble. One empire lost 3 entire sectors in a single month. Another watched helplessly as its proudest stronghold was stripped bare, its defenses shattered as if they were made of paper. Every failure deepened the suspicion that humanity was guiding the Cataclysm's hand, whispering orders from hidden command posts. Among the aliens, strange rumors spread mirroring those whispered among humans. Some believed the Black Ship was alive, a predator that hunted by instinct. Others insisted it carried the minds of humanity's first warriors, preserved in agony to fight forever. The most fearful claim was that it was not a weapon at all, but a seed, a harbinger meant to clear the galaxy of opposition so something far worse could grow. Meanwhile, deep within human space, a subplot began to take shape. A group of independent explorers claimed to have uncovered fragments of a hidden facility buried in the crust of an abandoned moon. Within its vaults lay shattered machines that resembled pieces of the Black Ship's hull. Strange etchings lined the walls, not written in any language used today. The explorers believed it was a war foundry, a place where humanity had once built more than just a single weapon. But before they could bring their findings to the public, they vanished. Their last transmission was cut off mid-sentence, replaced by static. Some said the Council silenced them to keep the truth hidden. Others whispered that the Black Ship itself erased them to protect its secret. Every new discovery only deepened the conflict. Humanity teetered between pride and dread, between embracing the Black Ship as savior and fearing it as destroyer. The aliens gathered strength, their hatred boiling into plans of vengeance. And in the darkness, the Cataclysm moved with unshakable purpose, each attack carving the galaxy closer to an unknown design. The heart of the conflict was not only survival, but trust. Could humanity convince the galaxy they were not in control of the Black Ship, when every strike seemed to prove the opposite? Could they survive long enough to uncover the truth before the united wrath of alien empires fell on them? Or was the truth even more terrifying, that the Black Ship had no master, no allegiance, and no intention of stopping until every balance of power was erased? As the Black Ship's engines stirred again, charting a course into contested space, billions across the stars held their breath. Humanity braced for blame, aliens braced for destruction, and no one knew whether the next strike would bring salvation, annihilation, or something far stranger. The galaxy was not yet at war, but the silence before the storm was breaking, and in that silence, the Cataclysm waited, its shadow falling heavier with each passing night. The silence of space had never felt so heavy. Everywhere, eyes were fixed on the Black Ship's movements. It had gone from rumor to shadow, from shadow to undeniable fact, and now it was something worse, an unstoppable presence shaping the fate of entire civilizations. With every new strike, fear grew sharper, and the galaxy braced for the moment when fear would ignite into war. Humanity stood in the center of the storm, and the pressure was unbearable. Alien empires openly accused them of unleashing the Cataclysm. Councils burned with rage, their representatives pounding fists against polished tables, demanding action. Threats of invasion spread across the channels of diplomacy. Humanity's ambassadors spoke in calm voices, but beneath their words was desperation. They begged for time, begged for understanding, but every day the black ship made their pleas ring hollow. Every strike looked too precise, too deliberate, too perfectly aligned with humanity's survival. The galaxy saw not victims, but conspirators. Within human space, whispers of betrayal cut just as deep. The airs had grown louder, spreading their message across stations and colonies, declaring the black ship to be humanity's rightful inheritance. They filled the streets with banners, their chants echoing against steel corridors. The Cataclysm is ours. Their leaders promised protection and dominance, claiming that the aliens' fear was proof of humanity's destiny. For those beaten down by fear and isolation, the heir's message offered pride, even hope. Others saw only danger, believing the cult was pushing humanity toward a war it could never survive. Clashes broke out on the streets, protest against protest, human against human. Meanwhile, soldiers on the front lines lived in dread of what came next. Patrol reports grew stranger. Ships caught glimpses of the black ship moving between stars without using gates, as though it could fold space itself at will. Some claimed they saw it hover in silence, watching from a distance, as if waiting to see what they would do. Crews whispered that the longer it lingered, the more they felt it in their bones, like a presence pressing against their thoughts. One captain ordered his men to fire on the shadow before panic overtook them. The blasts lit the void, but the black ship did not return fire. It simply faded, leaving only silence behind. The captain was later relieved of command, but his words haunted those who heard them. It looked at us. It knew us. In hidden chambers, human scientists raced against time. Every scrap of recovered data was examined, every rumor of lost archives chased. What they uncovered painted a picture darker than anyone had imagined. The black ship had not been built for one war. It had been built for many. It was not a last resort, but a long plan, seeded into the galaxy by ancestors who believed survival required something beyond morality. Some scientists whispered that it was more than a machine, that it carried within it fragments of human will, bound together into something eternal. Others argued it had evolved beyond even its creator's intent, becoming a force with its own design. The explorers who vanished after discovering the ruined war foundry became a new obsession. Their files were recovered in fragments, enough to confirm what many feared. The war foundry had not been alone. There were more sites hidden across forgotten systems, sealed and buried. Each one might hold more pieces of the Cataclysm, or worse, more weapons like it. The black ship might not be unique. It might only be the first alien leaders were not blind to these revelations. Across the stars, fleets gathered, driven by a singular purpose. For the first time in recorded history, species that had sworn eternal enmity stood together, united by a greater fear. Their goal was clear. Humanity had to be destroyed before the black ship remade the galaxy. Armadas massed along human borders, their weapons hot, their commanders waiting only for the order. Entire worlds shuddered under the weight of expectation, knowing that if war broke out, there would be no safe place to hide. Inside humanity's High Council, the debate turned desperate. Some argued for surrender, to hand over every secret they had, even if it meant being stripped of power. Others demanded preemptive strikes to burn the enemy before the enemy burned them. But in truth, no one knew what to do. They did not control the Cataclysm. They could not stop it, could not summon it, could not even predict where it would appear next. And yet the galaxy believed it was theirs. Humanity was trapped, condemned for a weapon that might destroy them as surely as it destroyed their enemies. And then came the moment that drove the tension to breaking point. The black ship did something it had never done before. It stopped. For weeks it lingered above a system at the edge of known space. It did not fire. It did not move. It simply hung there, a black silhouette against the stars. Every sensor, every probe, every eye in the galaxy was turned on it. What was it waiting for? What was it guarding? Theories exploded. Some said it was calling more of its kind. Others claimed it had chosen a human colony nearby as its seat of power. Whispers grew that it was feeding, drawing strength from something hidden in that system. Fleets closed in cautiously, watching from afar, too terrified to move closer but too desperate to stay away. Humanity begged for patience, arguing that attacking it would only unleash something worse. But fear does not listen to patience. Fear demands action. The aliens prepared a strike unlike anything before. A coalition fleet larger than any ever assembled began its march toward the system. Entire sectors emptied their defenses to contribute. Every empire, every rival, every longtime enemy sent ships. The void shook under the weight of the largest force the galaxy had ever known. Their goal was not just to destroy the Black Ship, it was to erase humanity's shadow once and for all. Back in human space, the panic was overwhelming. Families prepared to evacuate, though there was nowhere safe to go. Soldiers swore oaths knowing they were outnumbered, outgunned, and perhaps already doomed. The heirs marched through the streets in triumph, proclaiming that the coming battle would prove humanity's destiny. Opponents shouted back that it would be the end of everything. And still, the Black Ship waited, silent, watching, as if it knew the galaxy was coming for it and it welcomed the challenge. Tension rippled through every layer of existence. Alien fleets sharpened their blades. Human leaders held their breath. Scientists warned that any strike might trigger consequences none of them could imagine. Ordinary people stared at the stars, praying that the silence would not break. And then, at the edge of that silence, the coalition armada crossed the threshold. Hundreds upon hundreds of ships filled the void, their engines glowing, their weapons primed. They moved like a tidal wave, unstoppable, all aimed at the single black silhouette that waited ahead. Every channel filled with the same message. This would be the end. But in the heart of human space, another discovery was made. Buried within the last of the lost archives, hidden so deeply it should never have been found, a fragment of a message came to light. It was old, older than any known colony, spoken in a voice no one recognized. The words were broken, the recording incomplete, but the meaning was unmistakable. The Black Ship had not been built as a weapon of protection alone. It had been built as a test. The fragment ended before explaining what that test was. But the meaning chilled everyone who heard it. The Black Ship was not simply destroying fleets, it was judging them. It was shaping the galaxy according to rules no one understood. And humanity, whether they wanted it or not, was at the center of its judgment. The coalition fleet drew closer, their weapons humming, the void itself trembling with anticipation. Humanity watched from afar, powerless to intervene. The Black Ship remained motionless, a shadow against the stars, as if daring them to strike first. The stage was set. The galaxy stood on the edge of war, and the Cataclysm loomed like a blade hanging over them all. The silence stretched, unbearable, as billions held their breath, waiting for the first shot that would decide the fate of everything. And then the Black Ship stirred. The Black Ship moved. At first it was only a faint ripple across the void, a shiver in the fabric of space itself. The coalition fleet halted, every captain holding their breath as the silhouette shifted. For weeks it had waited, silent and still, but now the Cataclysm awakened. Engines that emitted no light began to stir, and the shadow of its vast hull stretched across the stars like an eclipse. The galaxy braced for annihilation. But the Black Ship did not fire. Instead, something none had expected happened. The alien armada's weapon systems flickered, their power grids surging uncontrollably. Entire ships went dark, their engines stuttering as if strangled by unseen hands. Alarms screamed across the fleet, systems failing without warning. It was not an attack in the traditional sense. There was no blast, no beam, no explosion. It was as though the very act of approaching the ship had crippled their technology. Panic rippled through the alien commanders. Some barked orders to retreat. Others demanded they push forward to overwhelm the Cataclysm before it revealed its full power. But every moment that passed only deepened the chaos. Ships collided, unable to control their courses. Fighters spiraled into one another, their pilots screaming over open comms before static swallowed their voices. The greatest fleet ever assembled was unraveling not by fire, but by silence and failure. From afar, Humanity watched in stunned disbelief. Broadcasts streamed across their networks, every screen showing the collapse of the coalition. For many, it was vindication. The black ship had crippled their enemies without firing a single shot. For others, it was horror. If the Cataclysm could strip away an armada's strength so easily, what hope did anyone have if it turned its gaze on humanity? Then the second twist emerged. Hidden in the chaos, human scientists intercepted signals, fragments of encrypted transmissions leaking from the black ship itself. At first, the data was incomprehensible, layers of static and distortion. But as they pieced it together, the fragments formed a pattern. The ship was broadcasting not to humanity, not to the aliens, but to something else. The frequency was directed outward, beyond the galaxy, toward the dark spaces no one charted. This revelation spread like fire. The black ship wasn't only acting within the galaxy, it was calling out. But to what? Some argued it was summoning reinforcements, awakening more weapons hidden among the stars. Others feared it was reaching for something older, something humanity's ancestors had once touched, but dared not name. The galaxy was no longer simply at war with a weapon, it might be standing at the edge of an invasion from beyond. The Council tried to suppress the discovery, but the truth could not be contained. Whispers raced through colonies and stations. If the Cataclysm was not acting alone, then everything they knew about survival was about to collapse. Humanity was no longer accused of controlling the black ship. Now they were accused of unleashing something far worse. Alien leaders, watching their fleets dissolve, made a decision born of desperation. They turned their fury not only on the black ship, but directly on humanity. If the Cataclysm was calling something greater, then humanity had to be destroyed before the signal was answered. Armies mobilized, invasions planned in the shadows. Humanity, already stretched thin, prepared for a storm that would break every defense they had. Inside human space, divisions reached their breaking point. The heirs declared that the signal was proof of destiny, that humanity's ancestors had prepared the galaxy for its true rulers, and the black ship was opening the path. They preached that whatever was coming from the dark would be humanity's allies, not enemies. Their followers armed themselves, preparing to fight not aliens but their own kind if necessary. At the same time, resistance groups grew bolder, demanding the black ship be destroyed no matter the cost. Civil war brewed beneath the surface, even as the galaxy closed in from the outside. The scientists who uncovered the signal pushed further, desperate to decode the fragments before it was too late. What they found only deepened the mystery. Buried in the data was a voice, layered, distorted, and ancient. It spoke in broken phrases, a mixture of human languages long dead, interwoven with sounds no one recognized. The message repeated over and over. The test begins. Balance must break. The harvest comes. No one understood what it meant, but the implications were terrifying. The black ship was not fighting for humanity, nor for dominance alone. It was enacting some design written into it ages ago. A design that had now been set into motion. The coalition fleet, crippled but not destroyed, began to reorganize. Those ships that still functioned prepared for one last desperate assault. They could not retreat now. To retreat would be to admit defeat, to surrender the galaxy to whatever the black ship had summoned. Their leaders broadcast a single message across all channels. If this is the end, let it burn with us fighting. Humanity's High Council split into chaos. Some demanded they throw their fleets into the battle to show the galaxy they stood against the Cataclysm. Others warned that such an act would only seal their doom, dragging them into the line of fire. Every word was drowned by the knowledge that the black ship was not even focused on them. Its gaze, if such a thing could be said to exist, was fixed outward, toward the dark. And then came the first answer. Sensors across the galaxy picked up faint distortions at the edge of known space. Small at first, then growing. Ripples, as though the void itself was folding. Something was responding to the black ship's call. The signal had been heard. The harvest, whatever it was on its way. Panic turned to hysteria. Alien fleets broke ranks, some rushing to intercept the incoming threat, others retreating to guard their homeworlds. Humanity braced for invasion, knowing that they might now face not only their neighbors, but something far beyond comprehension. Every station, every ship, every colony prepared for the worst. Through it all, the black ship remained silent, waiting like a sentinel. Its signal pulsed steadily, calling across the stars, patient and relentless. Humanity no longer knew if it was their guardian, their executioner, or simply the key that had opened a door never meant to be touched. The galaxy's great powers, broken and fearful, turned their rage into desperate plans. Some plotted to strike Earth itself, believing that destroying humanity would cut the black ship's purpose away. Others whispered of uniting in one last attempt to destroy the Cataclysm before whatever answered its call arrived. The fragile balance of galactic history shattered, and the future hung on a blade's edge. In the shadows, the heirs celebrated, convinced their prophecy was coming true. Resistance fighters sharpened their weapons, preparing to strike against both cultists and councils. Soldiers at the borders watched distortions grow on their scanners, their hearts pounding with the knowledge that something vast was approaching. Scientists huddled in dim labs, replaying the ancient message over and over, searching for meaning in words that could decide the fate of everything. And above it all, the black ship loomed, its hull alive with faint pulses of light, like veins beneath skin. It did not fire. It did not move. It only waited, its call echoing into the void, a beacon for something greater, something older, something that would decide whether humanity and the galaxy itself would endure or be erased. The Coalition fleet drew its final breath, weapons primed, ready to unleash everything they had. The distortions at the edge of space grew brighter, closer, undeniable. Humanity held its breath. The Cataclysm's shadow stretched across every world, every heart. The test had begun, and no one knew who, if anyone, would survive its end. The void trembled. At the edges of known space, the distortions became impossible to ignore. Great folds tore through the darkness, bending light and dragging the stars into strange shapes. Every sensor in the galaxy screamed warnings. Something vast was coming, something older than empires, older perhaps than humanity itself. The black ship had called, and now the answer had arrived. The Coalition fleet, battered and broken, moved to face the threat. Thousands of alien ships realigned into formation, their weapons primed to burn the unknown. Human broadcasts picked up their battle cries, a mix of desperation and defiance. For the first time, ancient rivals stood as one, not against each other but against the abyss. Humanity watched, powerless, knowing they would be judged by what happened next. From the distortions emerged shapes. At first they seemed like shadows, vast silhouettes gliding through the rifts. Then details sharpened. They were ships, but not like any seen before. Their forms were jagged and uneven, as if grown rather than built. Their hulls pulsed faintly with light, alive with veins of energy that rippled like blood under skin. They moved with silent precision, sliding into the galaxy as though they had always belonged there. The Coalition fired first. Beams of plasma and kinetic storms streaked through the void, tearing into the newcomers with the full force of galactic might. Explosions flared, but when the light faded, the creatures, ships, entities, whatever they were, remained. Their hulls rippled, absorbing the damage as though it had never existed. And then they answered. A wave of energy rippled outward, invisible at first, then visible as arcs of white lightning connecting ship to ship. Entire formations collapsed in seconds, vessels imploding without a trace of fire, as if their very existence had been erased. Pilots screamed, not in pain, but in horror. They reported feeling their thoughts pulled away, devoured, before silence claimed them. The Coalition's proud armada was broken in moments. The survivors scattered, their unity dissolving into chaos. Some tried to flee, others fought on, but nothing seemed to matter. The newcomers advanced like a tide, unstoppable and merciless, and through it all the black ship remained motionless, watching. Humanity stared at the broadcasts, waiting for the Cataclysm to strike, to intervene, to do something. But it simply lingered, its signal still pulsing outward, steady and patient, as though this slaughter was part of a plan. In desperation, the Human Council ordered their fleets forward. They could no longer sit idle. Every ship humanity had was sent toward the battlefield, not to fight the newcomers, but to reach the black ship. If there was any chance of stopping this, it had to begin with the Cataclysm itself. As human fleets pushed through the chaos, a strange thing happened. The newcomers ignored them. Alien ships were torn apart in every direction, but humanity's vessels slid through untouched, as if invisible to their hunters. It was a horrifying confirmation of what the galaxy had always suspected. The Black Ship had called these things here, and they had no interest in destroying their chosen species. The human fleet reached the Cataclysm, their comms flooding with pleas. Captains shouted, scientists begged, soldiers prayed, anything to make the ship acknowledge them. And then at last, it moved. The Black Ship stirred, its vast hull shifting as though stretching after a long sleep. Lights pulsed across its surface, veins of energy surging with power. Slowly, impossibly, it opened. Panels of its hull folded apart like jaws, revealing an inner chamber glowing with a pale, cold light. Human ships drifted closer, compelled by something they could not resist. A voice filled their minds, not through speakers, not through radios, but directly, layered and ancient. It spoke in words and tones that felt human and alien all at once. The test is complete. The harvest begins. The scientists scrambled to interpret the message. The fragments from the archives echoed in their minds. The Black Ship had not been a guardian. It had been a beacon. Humanity had not been protected for its survival, but preserved for its purpose. They were not prey to be destroyed, nor rulers to inherit the stars. They were seed. The newcomers advanced, but instead of attacking humanity, they surrounded them. The Black Ship turned its weapons outward for the first time in this battle, not on the aliens who had invaded human space for centuries, but on the coalition itself. In a single barrage, black energy swept across the void, tearing through alien fleets, sparing only humanity. The message was undeniable. Humanity was not the victim. Humanity was not even the master. Humanity was chosen stock, preserved while the galaxy burned around them. On the ground, riots exploded. The heirs rejoiced, claiming their prophecy fulfilled. Resistance fighters wept, realizing the truth was worse than anything they feared. Across human worlds, people screamed at their screens as the galaxy's balance shattered in real time. Entire civilizations crumbled while humanity stood untouched. And yet, in that moment of terror, something unexpected happened. A small group of human ships broke away from the fleet, carrying the scientists who had uncovered the fragments. They had decoded one final piece of the ancient archives, something the councils had ignored. Buried deep in the records was a warning left by those who built the Black Ship. The weapon listens. The weapon judges. If we are found wanting, it will not spare us. The scientists realized the test was not yet finished. Humanity's survival was not guaranteed. The Black Ship's silence, its watchful patience, meant it was still deciding. And the newcomers, the harvesters, were not allies but part of the judgment. If humanity embraced them, they would be absorbed into something greater, something unrecognizable. If they resisted, they risked being erased like every other species. The climax came as the newcomers closed their circle. The coalition was gone. Alien fleets were nothing but debris. The Black Ship turned toward Earth itself, its vast silhouette blotting out the stars. Humanity stood frozen, waiting for the judgment to fall, but then a twist no one had expected. The Black Ship faltered. Its pulsing light flickered, its movements stuttered. The newcomers halted as well, as though waiting. Human ships reported a sudden surge of interference, as if the Cataclysm itself was struggling against something. And then the voice returned, fractured and strained. The test is corrupted. The seed resists. The meaning struck like thunder. Humanity, despite everything, had not obeyed the plan. The divisions within, the resistance, the refusal to unite under the banner of the Black Ship, it had changed the outcome. The weapon could not deliver its judgment cleanly. Humanity was not a willing heir. The newcomers trembled, their hulls pulsing erratically. The Black Ship's light grew brighter, its veins blazing as if burning from within. A fracture split across its massive hull, spilling blinding energy into the void. Something had gone wrong. The test had broken. The galaxy held its breath as the impossible unfolded. The Black Ship, humanity's terrifying weapon, began to tear itself apart. and in its final transmission, before the light consumed it, came a single broken phrase: "The harvest delayed." But not ended. The newcomers froze. Their veins dimmed. Slowly, silently, they slipped back into the distortions, retreating into the dark from which they had come. The rifts closed behind them, leaving only silence and wreckage. Humanity was spared. The coalition was gone. The black ship was no more. But the final twist lingered like a shadow over every survivor. The harvest had not been stopped, only postponed. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the edge of known space, something vast still waited. And when it returned, humanity would no longer be shielded by the Cataclysm. The galaxy had been reset, but not in the way anyone expected. Humanity now stood alone, no longer prey, no longer protected, but a species marked. Every survivor knew the truth. The black ship had not saved them. It had warned them, and the test would come again. The galaxy was silent. Where once fleets had clashed and stars had burned with the fury of war, now only debris drifted in the void. Twisted fragments of ships floated like tombstones, reminders of civilizations that had fought desperately but could not survive the storm. Humanity's vessels moved among the wreckage carefully, scanning for survivors, recovering fragments of data, and recording evidence of what had taken place. There was no celebration, no victory cries, only the heavy weight of knowing they were alive when so many others were not. The destruction of the black ship left a hole, not just in the fabric of space, but in the hearts of those who had watched it all unfold. For generations, the Cataclysm had been a symbol of fear, power, and mystery. It had defined humanity's place in the galaxy, whether as scapegoats, survivors, or the chosen. Now it was gone, torn apart in a final blaze of light that had shaken the stars. For the first time, humanity stood without the shadow of the black ship. But with that freedom came a new terror, the knowledge that something greater still waited beyond, and one day it would return. On Earth, reactions were divided. Some people rejoiced, seeing the black ship's destruction as liberation. The heirs were silenced, their prophecies shattered. Without the Cataclysm to rally around, their followers drifted into disarray. The resistance, long mocked for their warnings, gained sudden legitimacy, but even they found no comfort in the outcome. They had been right about the danger, yet no one could deny that humanity had survived this ordeal only because of the ship's final collapse. The paradox haunted everyone. Humanity lived because the very weapon they feared had turned against itself. Across the colonies, leaders faced the same question. What came next? The coalition was broken. The great alien empires had been shattered or erased. Their fleets lay in ruins, their worlds vulnerable. For the first time in history, humanity stood without rivals capable of challenging them. Some saw this as destiny fulfilled, a chance to claim the galaxy and build a new order. Others saw only danger, knowing that trying to replace the coalition would drain them of what little strength they had left. Expansion could bring unity, but it could also invite collapse. The scientists who had unraveled the ship's signals worked tirelessly to piece together what remained of its final messages. They confirmed what many already feared. The newcomers, the harvesters, had not been destroyed. They had retreated. Because the test had been corrupted, delayed by humanity's refusal to obey the black ship's design. But delay was not defeat. One day, perhaps in decades, perhaps in centuries, they would return. Humanity had been spared, not saved. The true test was yet to come. This knowledge spread quietly at first, whispered in private councils and hidden reports. But it could not be contained. Soon every colony, every station, every city knew the truth. Humanity had been marked. Fear could have crushed them, but something else began to grow instead. Reflection. Across worlds scarred by war, people began to ask the same questions. If the harvest would return, what must humanity become to face it? If no weapon, not even the Cataclysm, could guarantee their survival, then the answer had to be found within themselves. The voices of ordinary people became louder than those of politicians and generals. Farmers on frontier worlds, engineers in orbital stations, miners in asteroid belts, all began to demand the same thing: unity, not under a weapon, not under fear, but under choice. Humanity's divisions had nearly doomed them, but their refusal to surrender fully to the Black Ship's design had also saved them. That contradiction became the seed of a new philosophy. They would prepare, they would build, they would remember, but they would not bow to a destiny written by others, whether alien or machine. In the aftermath, memorials rose across human space, not just for their own dead, but for the countless alien lives erased in the Cataclysm's final storm. On Earth, a monument was built from fragments of alien wreckage recovered from orbit. Its inscription was simple: "We were tested. We are not finished." It was both a warning and a promise. For the survivors of the coalition, scattered and broken, humanity's actions became a subject of bitter debate. Some blamed them still, insisting that the Black Ship was their creation and their curse. Others, however, saw something different. They had watched humanity's fleet spared when all others were destroyed, but they had also seen the Black Ship fall because humanity had not submitted. Perhaps, some argued, the future of the galaxy would depend not on weapons, but on whether humanity could lead differently than the empires before them. Whether by choice or necessity, the survivors began to drift toward human space, seeking alliance, refuge, or simply answers. In the shadows, rumors persisted. Some whispered that fragments of the Black Ship still existed, scattered across the void. Teams of scavengers risked everything to hunt for them, hoping to claim pieces of its power. Others feared those fragments still pulsed faintly, waiting for someone reckless enough to awaken them. Humanity debated fiercely whether such relics should be destroyed, preserved, or hidden. No answer satisfied everyone, but one truth was clear: the Cataclysm might be gone, but its shadow would linger for generations. Time passed. Humanity rebuilt. Colonies scarred by invasion were repaired, fleets were reforged, and new alliances were cautiously formed with alien survivors who dared to hope that cooperation could replace conquest. The heirs dwindled into obscurity, their chants and rituals fading into the echoes of history. The resistance, once underground, became part of governance, their voices ensuring that humanity would not forget the danger of placing blind faith in weapons or prophecy. Yet even in peace, the memory of the harvesters remained. Children grew up hearing the story of the Black Ship and the test it had called down. Teachers spoke of the lesson it carried, that survival was not about destiny, nor about the strongest fleets, but about choice. Humanity had been spared not because they were chosen, but because they had chosen themselves. And still, in the quiet corners of the galaxy, astronomers watched the stars for signs of the distortions. Scientists poured their lives into decoding every fragment of the Black Ship's transmissions. Soldiers trained, not for conquest, but for the day the harvest would return. Humanity lived in the shadow of a future war, but not in despair. They carried their fear alongside their determination, turning it into fuel. The final twist of history was not that humanity had survived when others had fallen. It was that they had been given time. Time to grow, to unite, to decide what they would become before the next test arrived. No one knew how long they had. Perhaps decades, perhaps centuries. But when the harvest returned, the galaxy would see, not a species preserved by a weapon, but one forged by its own will. The stars, once filled with fear, now burned with possibility. Humanity looked to them not as a prison, but as a promise. The Black Ship had fallen, but its legacy had left a question only they could answer. When the test comes again, will we face it as prey, as seed, or as something entirely new? For now, the void was silent. Humanity lived, rebuilt, and remembered. And in every heart, from Earth To the farthest colony, one truth endured. They had been tested, they had endured, and they had chosen their own path. The harvest would return, but so would they.